everyone, to the Hot Tag Hooligans Wrestling Podcast show with myself, Aaron, and Tom. On this episode, we mentioned it last month. We're going to dive deep into who we believe are the top three underrated wrestlers of all time. And I get it may not be all the way back to the 1910s wrestling scene, but probably about of our lifetimes will probably suffice for that. And to help us break that down, we've brought back Aaron Silvers and, of course, J.R. Huffman. How's it going, guys?
Going well, ready to rock.
All right. So, this one will, and I say this every time, this will be amazing if we have any the same, because I really believe some of us really believe certain people should be pushed higher than others. Me and Tom disagree sometimes. Tom's always been a big guy fan. He loves Kane and he loves the Big Show. And I'm always like, quit pushing those guys so much, whenever they were getting pushed. So should be very, very interesting. Tom, I'm actually going to start with you tonight on this. So who is your number three most underrated wrestler of your lifetime, basically?
So first of all, I want to preface this with it's wild of how many people I feel like are deserving to be on this list. When I actually go to think about it, there's so many great talents that I feel like never got the recognition that they deserved or the push that they deserved to do bigger and better things. So with that being said, it was very hard for me to narrow it down to three. And I tried to take some personal bias out of it, but that's very hard to do because if you're a fan of someone, that's always going to be something that you put into your perspective when you're making a judgment call. So my number three is actually Wade Barrett. I love everything about his style. His promos I thought were fantastic. Even when he was just doing his Bad News Barrett gimmick, to me it was over, and it was one of the greatest things on Raw at the time. And I just feel like they never did look at him as a top guy, and he never got that real push to see how it would do. But I feel like everything he did do, he knocked it out of the park.
Wow. And, Wade Barrett's one of those guys, I believe they wanted to push him, but he was always getting injured a lot. It seemed like every time he was getting through with this new character, something would happen injury-wise. And it's a shame that his career is basically over because of injuries. And there's still always a part of me sometimes when I see him on NXT, I'm wondering, sort of like an Edge situation. Could he wrestle again now? Could he get the clearance that he needs now? And hopefully one day we'll get to see that. Wade Barrett's a great pick, though. I really liked Wade Barrett and everything he did.
Well, if you kind of follow his Instagram and stuff, he's still active. I mean, he's still hitting the weights. He still looks as good as he ever has. And hopefully his heavy training and posting about it is an indicator that he may step back into the ring sooner rather than later.
And I hope that's the case there, Tom. I wasn't a guy that made my list, but I definitely agree with where you're going with that. I mean, I never really knew much about him until I saw the Nexus invasion, and what he did leading that group of guys that all became stars in the end was great. And he just kind of, fizzled out. And again, I didn't catch up with him when he left out. I didn't know if he was injured or what happened, but he fizzled out. The King Barrett was great. I'm afraid I've got some bad news. That was awesome. That was over, like you said. And I would love to see him come back, even if it's just for a Rumble appearance. That'd be great. I'd like to see him back in the ring.
JR, your thoughts on Wade Barrett?
Well, a lot of my research I had to do after Aaron, of all people, talked to me. I missed wrestling for about 5 or 6 years. Unfortunately, Wade Barrett was in that section that I did miss. I had to go back and do my homework. And I did start with the YouTube videos of the Nexus invasion. I got to looking at different videos, watching different matches on Peacock with him. And his ability to talk on the mic, you can tell that on SmackDown now, but even when he was in the NXT, he still got the gift of gab along with all those other great qualities that you all said. And I think that's definitely a great pick, especially for one of the most underrated. And to your point, though, it could be those injuries. And with someone with that much momentum going, and I'm going to use a new term I hadn't heard before later on. Um, but with that much momentum going, I couldn't see why they wouldn't push him. But it had to have something, at least for the time period he was in, that he was injury prone, and I would like to see him come back as well.
All right, Aaron, you're number 3.
Number 3. So I started with my list here. I'm going to go in 3 different eras with each pick. So I'm going to start back in my early days of wrestling when I started out in the mid to late 80s. I'm going to go with Haku. Haku / Ming, whenever he went over to the 90s time frame. But Haku, great heel. He had some flashes of greatness in the late 80s, early 90s. He's also known, not just back then, but even still today, as a legit locker room badass. He's one guy that everybody says, you do not mess with Ming, you don't mess with Haku, whatever his name was at the time. That's just not a guy you mess with. He had the run where he was King Haku, great. He was also a part of the Samoans, the Samoan tag team. That was great. But his heel stuff, especially, when he got the mouthpiece with Bobby Heenan and the Heenan family, even better. Partnering up with him, Andre, King Kong Bundy, all those folks. But I'm just going to go with Haku and Ming. He had a pretty good career overall. And again, I don't really think he got as much of a highlight as he should have.
Yeah, definitely one of the trendsetters of the original Bloodline. Definitely was Haku. And you're right. He was someone who everyone, says he was a complete badass and was a legit badass. He was just at the NWA event that Tom and I were at. He was walking through the lobby, but I didn't say anything to him, but he seemed like one of the nicest guys that you would ever want to talk to. And sometimes it's one of those ways, you can be the nicest guy in the world until you cross somebody. I definitely, I thought they really could have done something a little bit more with him in the WWE, especially when he came back with Rikishi during that whole time when Rikishi turned on The Rock. And They kind of brought that kind of storyline together. And he kind of feuded with Kane and The Undertaker. A really good hand, always a good hand that you would probably want in your locker room to keep the guy straight. Probably should have won a few singles championships, but definitely was a former WWE Tag Team Champion, of course, with Andre. King Kaku, definitely a memorable character for sure, and underrated. Aaron? Oh, sorry. My bad.
It's okay.
Your thoughts on Haku?
Well, I thought maybe he got the double dip on this one.
No, your thought on Haku?
Well, I have a lot of sentiments the same as Aaron, but if you go on, you can or look up a lot of videos of stories, people talking about Haku. They said he was one of the toughest men that ever lived. There's even things going around now that he's at 63 years old, he can still take out Brock Lesnar. That says a lot about who you are and how tough you really are. If I could describe Haku in one word, it was limited. If he would have been, I think if he would have been in the ECW era, if he would have been in that organization, he would have been world champion. That would have went right into his wheelhouse, and I think that limitation that was put on him would have been taken off. But I did love the King Haku, the Tonga Death Grip, the spike, all the different things. But I think maybe even the bookers maybe they didn't know what he was capable of. So that's why they put the limitations on him. But he was definitely underutilized, pretty much from beginning to end of his entire career. So that was a great pick.
Tom?
Yeah, I totally agree. He's not somebody that I watched during that time. But going back, you look at everything that he did accomplish and just the aura around him, you look back and just kind of shake your head you feel like it should have been, a little bit better than what it was for him. And now we don't know, maybe that tough guy image or whatever wasn't the greatest for management at the places that he was working. So there could have been, some politics involved. I really don't know. Maybe we'll get some information on that in a documentary someday. But, definitely looking back, you would have thought he would have been a lot higher up than what he was. Definitely somebody I could see being world champion, a monster heel. uh, to really make the baby faces look good. So yeah, 100% great pick.
I think sometimes, somebody like Haku was a victim to stereotype because before he came along, the Wild Samoans were exactly that. They were Wild Samoans. So they were always taking on television represented as these savages who were dangerous. But now, if Haku was to come along and you see the progression with the Usos and you see the progression with Roman Reigns, perhaps he would be able to do a whole lot more in the ring and character wise than just be that savage Samoan. So, uh, great pick there, Aaron. JR, you're number 3.
All right. So for my number 3, a lot like Aaron, switched up generations. I have a couple of that are no longer with us, and some that are still in the business. And for my number 3, I've got Bam Bam Bigelow, arguably one of the top 5 best big men of all time. If he's not in that category, it's because he was underutilized. He won the Southern Heavyweight Champion. He's won a lot of what I would call mid-card world championships or territory championships, but he was never able to be in that spotlight. Maybe it was booking, what have you, but he had an illustrious career. I mean, no one could match his athleticism, his size, his speed, all of those elements together. I mean, you would think I'm talking about Keith Lee, but I'm talking about Bam Bam Bigelow, and he was the benchmark for all of the big guys. You talk to any big man that came after him, and they will accredit a lot of their style and a lot of the things that they do in the ring to Bam Bam Bigelow. So that's why he's my number 3 pick.
Tom, your thoughts on Bam Bam?
Bam Bam is a fantastic pick. He's somebody that I've went back and watched a lot. Way after he was in his prime and things, and just it's amazing actually some of the athleticism that he was able to show at his size. And I still don't think that there's a big man today that can do quite what he did at the size he was. There's some fantastic ones out there. I think of Jonah, and of course Keith Lee, and they're great, but they still don't hold a candle to Bam Bam Bigelow. So I think it's a great pick.
Aaron.
Yeah, another great pick there. I'm agreeing with that. I've seen him in some different eras also. Bam Bam with in the ECW days. I also saw him with Luna Vachon in the later WrestleManias and later on. But anybody that's able to put over half of an NFL football team in WrestleMania, like Bam Bam did, he's gold in my book. For somebody that never wrestled, he put him over. So to do that and to have his size and his athleticism, I can't disagree. He was a great heel.
All right, for my number 3, we'll go with someone who early on in his career really struggled. And he struggled with characters by the name of Johnny Polo, and he struggled with characters Scotty Flamingo. But he is one of the greatest wrestling minds that I have seen psychology-wise. And then once his character finally developed, he was one of the most over characters in every promotion he went to. And my number 3 is Raven. Man, let me tell you, from somebody who really was having some terrible gimmicks, like I said, like the Johnny Polo and the Scotty Flamingo, he got it together and he created a memorable character who even today has this enigma about him. We talk about Jeff Hardy having an enigma about him, but Raven really did. He's in his flock in WCW was fantastic and developed great talent like Billy Kidman and Perry Saturn, and really pushed those to the forefront. His work in ECW really helped ECW become that mainstream promotion. A lot of people, there is no Tommy Dreamer without Raven. There's just not. And for everyone who thinks Dreamer is the heart and soul of ECW, perhaps, but it was because of Raven and how real Raven was to get those storylines over. When he got to WWE, even though they were burying him in hardcore matches, he was still getting over. He was still getting one of the best reactions in the crowd whenever his music would hit. And for me, it's a shame that he never got a chance to really get that main event feud in WWE. But he was able to also help launch Impact Wrestling and TNA, as being one of their big first champions. I remember my buddy was there in Nashville when he won the title, and I remember watching the little $9.99 Wednesday night pay-per-views when it happened, and it's just a great moment for him. I wish some more people would probably pick his mind, and because he's a great wrestling mind. If I was starting a company, he would be somebody I would kind of pick. He's sort of like that Jake the Snake Roberts, just has that mentality to him that understands ring psychology so much. And my number 3 is Raven. JR.
Well, you already know what I think because I love ECW. That's one of the greatest times in my life. And Tommy Dreamer will tell you himself, there is no Tommy Dreamer without Raven. In my opinion, one of the top 5 feuds of all time. It was amazing to watch his transformation as well. I didn't even know probably for about 3 months watching ECW that was Johnny Polo. I thought it was some character they had created. I had no idea he had transformed himself into. That's how much he convinced me he was a new entity or a new being. But I love Raven as being that pick. And you're right, he never got to have that WrestleMania moment, but he really deserved it. The steam wasn't behind his character when he went in. You can tell by the way that he was booked and then the matches he was in, what he was there for. But like you said, he still got it over. The fans, he still had a following, and he still does that great wrestling. I agree with that. Great pick.
Aaron?
Yeah, so I definitely knew you were going to perk up the ears of JR there. He is an ECW through and through, I'll tell you. He's got some good stories about that. But anyway, Johnny Polo, yeah, that was definitely a huge difference compared to what he ended up being in Raven, going from that to that, especially in ECW and, making it in several organizations as the Raven character finally. Huge there when you think about that. And like you said, the group with WCW, Perry Saturn, Billy Kidman, a great group there. I think, to just an opinion, I think probably some of his backstage drama probably held him back from what I hear today from stories from others. But Raven is a great pick. Definitely underutilized, underrated, but probably for some reasons we don't know about.
He's toyetic, Tom.
He's very toyetic.
Very.
I will say that I wasn't the biggest WCW fan, and I've talked about many times having to go back and watch and see things, and I don't have an attachment to Raven, but I realized that once he got to the WWE, they did absolutely nothing with him. I remember it like it was yesterday, and I was thinking, man, this guy's come over. He looks cool. And I was like, I need to know more about this guy. And I see everything that he had done previously. And I was like, they don't like him for whatever reason. They're not doing anything with him that matters. And so, yeah, I definitely agree. That's a good pick. For what the reason is, who knows? But, he definitely was not given the time and effort that I felt like he deserved just by going back and watching.
In my opinion, he has the best Bill Goldberg match of Bill Goldberg's career. If you haven't seen that match, it's kind of like the street fight atmosphere. I just love it. And, him Lodi holding up the sign that says "Use my sign," and it actually has the stop sign inside the cardboard sign. It was just classic. And there's no doubt Raven came up with that spot. So, yeah, that's my number 3. I think it's really good. I'll go next with my number 2, and it's because he was already said. And it's Bam Bam Bigelow. And, that's why I didn't comment on it a while ago, because I was like, I can't believe he actually had somebody I had on here. So, to me, Bam Bam is just an amazing, amazing athlete. It's too bad towards the end of his career, he was kind of used as a comical piece sometimes in WWE and WCW. But the triple threat with Shane Douglas and Chris Candido, his memorable moments with Taz, even his first run in the WWE when he was brought in with Sir Oliver Humperdinck. He was booked as this great, fantastic, agile big man of the likes we had never seen. Now, he didn't have the height of an Andre the Giant, but you still knew that a big man shouldn't be able to move the way that he moved. And him busting out the cartwheel in the match always got over. Just a great guy, and he did kind of get his moment. Let's be honest. He got to main event WrestleMania, which let's be honest, a lot of people never get that opportunity, and I do believe he was the first person to not be in a title match outside of WrestleMania 1 to main event WrestleMania. So kudos to him, and his match with Lawrence Taylor is memorable because that was the first real crossover outside of Mr. T in so many years to main event of WrestleMania, and he did a fantastic job carrying LT to the fact that you believed it was believable. So Bam Bam was my number 2. So Tom, we'll go to you now with your number 2.
So my number 2, you guys are going to think I'm crazy because you're going to think people love this guy, okay? But what I want to focus in on is once he actually got to the big dance, once he got to the WWF, it was a joke. Talking about somebody that was over everywhere he was at. He won championships everywhere he was at. But you put him in the WWF and you put him in polka dots. I mean, Dusty Rhodes should have been the biggest thing in the WWF, in my opinion. For whatever reason, it just didn't happen. Not that there wasn't cool things going on.
That's the reason.
Yeah, well, that doesn't mean that, but that doesn't mean that there can't be an opportunity for them to go back and forth. And if they would have done that right, I would have loved to have seen Hogan and Dusty in something that was given the actual right story to be told that puts both of them over. And I think they missed out on a big deal there. To me, you're never really the best of the best unless you're WWE, and that's my personal opinion. Of course, I'm a WWE guy. Not that there ain't great things everywhere else, but if you ain't made it there, have you really made it? And that's kind of how I look at it. So Dusty is my number 2. I really feel like it's a huge travesty that they dropped the ball with him.
Yeah, it was strictly political. I mean, back then, Vince was one of those guys who, even till last year, he was very vindictive to certain people. And let's be honest, Dusty's creations were one of the reasons why Vince was having so much trouble for years. And but it's one of those things where it's so sad that pettiness gets involved sometimes. I agree, he definitely deserved more in the WWE. Aaron, your thoughts on Dusty being Tom's number 2?
Yeah, so I can agree with it since he mentioned it was the WWF Dusty Rhodes, because there's no doubt one of the greatest of all time, over the years in the 70s and 80s. But when you go to WWF, I definitely agree with Tom on that. Underutilized, kind of made a joke, to be honest with you. With the yellow and black polka dots and having him dance around and having Sapphire there with him. And it was just a comedy act. Honestly, it was never it was a never tough guy or never main event matches for him. So I respect the pick. I think number 2 is a good pick for you.
Yeah.
The first time I ever saw wrestling, first of all, Dusty Rhodes to me is one of the greatest of all time. He never looked the part, but he was always the part. He even got those polka dots over. I mean, he was kind of had his thumb put down on him, and I agree with all of Tom's points. But my uncles were diehard UK basketball fans, and I had no interest in it at all. But I heard a bunch of commotion going on, and the first person I ever saw wrestling in a ring was Dusty Rhodes. So he's been my number 1 on television. ever since I was probably 5 or 6 years old. But I agree with all those sentiments that he was very underutilized, and I also agree with Tom's point. If WWE is the pinnacle, or if that is the mountaintop to reach, are you really there if you've not reached the top of that? So that's a great pick for number 2, underutilized.
Aaron, you're number 2.
Yeah, my number 2 is from the next era to me, mostly early to mid 2000s, still around today, but kind of disappeared. Is Shelton Benjamin. Shelton Benjamin to me, very underutilized. Never really got his roses, if you want to call it roses. Got a lot of recognition for mid card titles. So he had the IC title, the 24/7 title. He had tag titles with Charlie Haas when they were with Kurt Angle and things. But Shelton Benjamin has had some great moments over the years and has been a part of some great moments that he's made it. He's made it work and put some people over the years. And he's did whatever they asked him to do over the years as far as his gimmicks and storylines. But again, I don't think he's as respected as he should be as it relates to being in the limelight. Maybe he is respected in the backstage area, but they don't put him out there for anybody to see. So everybody back there can love him, but nobody on TV sees him. And whenever we do see him, he's great. You got a collegiate wrestler from Minnesota that comes in just as athletic as anybody out there or in the locker room, and we never see him. That is my number 2.
Outside in my hallway here, leading towards the living room, there's a picture of me and Shelton Benjamin. Right after WrestleMania 19, of course, he was part of the world's greatest tag team then, and he was waiting for his flight as I was waiting for my flight. And I walked up to him and I said, I don't know if your plans are to ever go single. I said, but man, you've got it, and you're going to be a star if so. And it wasn't probably 4 months later, they kind of split him and Charlie up and broke up the Team Angle aspect, and there he is wrestling Triple H on Monday Night Raw and getting that victory. I really thought at that time, hey, this is a guy right here that they can strap a rocket to, because like I said, he had those mat wrestling credentials. He also had the high flying and the athleticism. And for some reason, and mostly in part because probably some promo skills, he lacked a little bit of some of the promo skills. I think he fell to the wayside. Definitely had some great moments. I mean, he took one of the greatest super kicks of all time.
Agreed.
And, his Money in the Bank ladder escapades are, endless. And I really I thought when they brought the Hurt Business back, now he was the serious Shelton Benjamin on the same level, kind of a Bobby Lashley, where he was believable and he could whoop you. And they kind of went with it for a little bit, and then now here we are back again. It's just always a lot of hot and cold with Shelton. I hate it because he's fantastic. That's a really good pick, though, Aaron. That's a good pick. JR, your thoughts on Shelton?
I actually had Shelton as my number 2 pick, and because there were so many choices and I was indecisive, I had to kick him off. But I was hoping that one of y'all would pick him up because I think he's the most underutilized there is out of everybody we've picked so far, and that's saying a lot because of so much that he brings to the table of his accolades, his background, and again, I do a lot of my homework, and they will tell you if you can compare someone to Brock Lesnar and how they can stand toe to toe with them behind the scenes, training, getting them ready to go up to the big leagues. It's a mystery to me why he wasn't pushed as hard as he could have been or pushed to the level that he should have been. But if I had to pick one opportunity that he has, it would be the mic skills. But having him with MVP, I thought the same thing. I thought he was getting ready to shoot to the moon. But that's a great number 2 pick.
I'll talk about him a little bit here in just a few minutes.
Well, go ahead. If he's your, well, we still got to get to number 2. JR's number 2. So JR, you're number 2.
My number 2 is Rusev / Miro. I actually started watching wrestling at probably the first part of his career. I picked it back up. I missed a few years, I told you all. And I saw this guy with this. He just had this aura about him. I thought he's going to be a world champion one day. They put him in the ring with one of the greatest of all time, John Cena. They had that feud for the U.S. title. All of those things going on, I thought he is about to step up to the next level. And then whatever happened, I don't know if it was injury or if it was just a change in character. Then Rusev Day was born. And then he had this white hot, here's my phrase, gimmick momentum. That gimmick momentum just took off. I mean, everybody, whether they liked Rusev or not, or Aiden English or whatever it was, I mean, everybody was chanting Rusev Day. It was selling merch like crazy. I thought that he was getting ready to go to the next level. And then for whatever reason, there were character changes and a lot of people brought in exit Rusev. Then I was like, well, here he comes, Miro. And then they put him in this video game angle. I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. And then here comes Miro the Redeemer. And I'm like, this is going to be the next world champion. And then he just went cold again. So whether it's booking, whether it's backstage, whatever it is, I just felt like Rusev is my number 2 pick. Miro, very underutilized talent.
I remember when he debuted in the Royal Rumble that year, and I was thinking, oh no, here we go with another foreign guy that they're going to try to strap to the rocket. And I'm not going to lie, I was not a fan of his probably for quite a while. And then I really feel like he got real comfortable in the ring. And they did give him some pretty good dance partners to try to show off his agility. Because at first it was just muscle, but then he showed off his agility. And he really took a turn. And like you're talking about, Rusev Day was very well done. He was white hot. Lana was the perfect person to go next to him as well, because she was the eye candy to that kind of helped it go. And then, of course, what are you going to do? They kind of split that up, and that terrible, terrible angle with her and Lana and Bobby Lashley was god awful, and Liv Morgan, and it was like, get off my TV. And I think that really hurt his momentum. AEW has not done anything with him. Even I'm not a big fan of the Miro the Redeemer. I'm not. I just know how this is going to end for him. And it's so sad to see someone so talented, and you know how it's going to end every single time. Hopefully he can get out of his contract soon. But I think he's someone that WWE could really use right now. I think, a couple years ago, they didn't need him as bad, but I think they need him now. And I think there would be a good spot for him to slide into. That's a great pick, though. Tom, Miro.
See, I think it's a fantastic pick. I was a fan of Rusev's from the beginning. But I like the big guys that can Rusev crush. That's to me that's just cool. So just following him through that, I'm with you. I thought he was gonna do really big things, and then they did shift and they did some things, and I feel like they're gonna keep him at this mid card level, and then like you said, the Rusev Day thing came along. But the thing with that is I feel like that was right about the time that his appearances on Total Divas was really hot and heavy and was really showing his actual, what we feel like is his actual character, which is a fun guy. And so when Rusev Day was happening, I think there was a lot of people, because that was a very highly rated show as well. And I feel like the fan base that was watching that was getting behind Rusev. And it was just a perfect moment. And I feel like it's one of those things that's not what the WWE wanted. So it kind of ticked them off. So they didn't let it do what it could have done, which is a silly business move at my point. If it's going to the moon, you just take it there. And then once that didn't happen and it fizzled out, it was just all downhill from there in the WWE. And then, I agree with everything you said about AEW. I'm a little higher on the Redeemer gimmick than what Aaron is, but I just think that, like he said, though, you know where it's going. It's got good legs, but it's like, who's helping to push these stories and characters? Because they've got some great talent behind the scenes, with Jake the Snake being there at times, and Mark Henry, and you got all these people back there. Taz is right there. They all have good creative minds that can help with the experience that they have, help push these characters and stories. I just don't know that whoever's got the ultimate control, which we assume is Tony Khan, if he's really utilizing all that talent to take a good idea and make it great. And I feel like it was right there on the cusp of it, just like it was in the WWE. So yeah, very good pick.
Aaron, Miro, Rusev.
Rusev Day. Love it. Love it, love it, love it. Glad you mentioned it. It's very underrated. Rusev all the way to Miro. I love it. He had a great feud all the way up to Mania when he comes out with the tank during his entrance. Epic entrance of all time, one of them anyway. In WrestleMania, whenever he's feuding there. The Rusev Day, to the point that a few of you have made already, was great. It caught on with the entertainment value. He goes to AEW. Now he's back to underutilized, underrated, in my opinion. I hope one of two things happens. He either comes back to WWE and they do something with him, or if he stays with AEW, they take him dark and he joins Malachi Black and House of Black, is what I would love to see. But I definitely agree with the number 2 underutilized pick, because that's exactly where he's at right now.
All right. Before we get to the number 1s, you don't have to go into deep explanations, but I had 3 honorable mentions, and I want to make sure I say those. One of them was Jerry the King Lawler. Man, oh man, when you look at his career and everything he did to what he got into WWE, very underrated. Number 2 is Walter or Gunter right now. That's somebody that I would be trying to strap something to outside of just the Intercontinental Championship. He's believable. He looks great. His ring work is fantastic. And the third one is Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. And I know that everyone thinks that, he's one of the greatest technicians of all time and he's got his dues and he's a legend. But in the WWE, he did not get his due. And I really believe, he was very underutilized throughout his career. So those are my 3 underrated honorable mentions. Tom, some honorable mentions for you.
For me, the one that pops in my head the most is Goldust. I know a lot of his opportunities were ones that he had demons he was battling. But when you look at the career of Dustin Rhodes from the beginning to where he's at now, he's had some stellar moments, and some periods of time where he's done some excellent work, storytelling, in-ring work. It's been there. But he's never really been the guy, even though he's talented enough to be the guy. But like I said, a lot of it has to do with some demons that he had been battling and things like that. And then, now he's probably, of course, there's a lot of rumors going around that he's going to be retiring soon. But the last few years, he's been doing some of the best work of his career. But he's not really at that point to where you're going to put the title on him or do anything really big with him at this point in his career. So I feel like his time may have, passed him by and he never got that opportunity. And the only other person that I, without really thinking about, I didn't really plan for any honorable mentions, but somebody that's right now that I feel like they're doing absolutely nothing with, that they could be doing something with, is Dewdrop, which is, they gave her a dumb name and you got to live with it. But I just don't think they're booking her correctly. I don't think she's doing what she should be doing. I think she should be a bigger part of their women's division than what she is. And I don't know if they just don't see it. They don't see her that way. But if you look at what she has done outside of the WWE main roster, I really feel like she was utilized a lot better there, and she needs her due.
Aaron?
Yeah, so 3 honorable mentions for me. I'm going to go back with one that I almost put in my top 3. That is going to be Dean Malenko. Been a part of a lot of folks' careers. Known as one of the better or best technical wrestlers of all time. He didn't get the nickname "Man of 1,000 Holds" for no reason. Great wrestler, great mind. So Dean Malenko's on that list. I think another one I'll put on that list, it's kind of a goofy one, and I think I've had this conversation before with JR, but she's been so underutilized and so underrated that it's now a joke every time we see her on TV, and that's Dana Brooke. Dana Brooke was made to be a joke from day one when she hit the TV, but I think she has some flashes where she can be great. So Dana Brooke would be my female. If I had to put it AEW wise, I'm going to throw my third one out there for AEW. He's starting to catch some momentum now, but Ethan Page. Ethan Page for my underrated there. I know there's a lot of controversy on whether he's good or not. I've heard a lot of folks that are not fans of his, but just overall, he can work. He has mic skills. He also, I seen him at an expo. He's great with the fans. Ethan Page is one of those that I would put as an honorable mention.
Sure.
All right. One thing you can't teach is size. Raquel Gonzalez, hands down. She's got the size. Maybe she needs a little bit more seasoning, but she was thrown in, and she's kind of fell in that same group with all the others that she's just there to build others up. I think they're really missing the boat with building her up because she's going to stand toe to toe, maybe tower over people, and she definitely has all the skills and abilities that it takes to be a world champion one day. My second one is Cesaro. World Tag Team Champion everywhere. Hope I didn't bust some number ones up. I probably did. But he was 4 years running in Wrestling Observer, the most underutilized wrestler in the game. If that doesn't scream to you, do something with this guy as a singles wrestler, I don't know what does. And last but not least, of my honorable mentions, one of my biggest disappointments, because I was a super fan of this guy, Aleister Black. When he came out of NXT, he was, I'm going to go ahead and say it. You could disagree with me if you want. Best entrance since The Undertaker. I don't care what anyone says. You know, Cross may have taken over that spot, but I just believe even with the House of Black and leaving and coming back, this is somebody they should have pushed to the moon a lot faster. Those are my three honorable mentions.
All right. Now here we go with number one, Tom.
So, we've already talked a little bit. It was Aaron's number two. Shelton Benjamin, for me, is somebody I look at and say, how in the world do you mess that up? How do you take a guy that looks great? He's a fantastic wrestler, a legit wrestler, and he's got charisma. Yeah, there's been a lot of world champions that needed a mouthpiece. If you feel like that's something that he needs to get better at, put him with somebody. I could see before the whole bloodline angle and all that, I could see Heyman being a mouthpiece for him and it being fantastic. There's so much talent there to not have done anything with him that, to me, it is a complete shame that he has never been a world champion for WWE. I mean, it's just, beating a dead horse, but he's a legit guy. He's legit. And how do you not use somebody that's legit?
I agree. Yeah, I mean, timing sometimes everything. Unfortunately, he was coming when Brock was there. He was coming when Orton was there. Coming through the scenes. And sometimes timing's everything. And perhaps now, if he was coming through the system, he'd be the guy. But it's tough. Aaron, you're number one.
Yep. So this one here, currently maybe going to do something as of this week again, but Dolph Ziggler. Dolph Ziggler, to me, been a mid-card, highlight in all of his career, in my opinion. He's had great matches. He puts everybody over. He could take the name Jobber McJobberson if you wanted to give him that name. Started out as a male cheerleader gimmick, made it, got out of the Spirit Squad, and he's now the show-off because he literally can work with the best of them, including Shawn Michaels. I would put him in the same category because he can do it. But he has never really been put in the big picture for very long. In my opinion, could be a top star in any organization at this point. It could be a face, but has never really been pushed that far long enough to do that. So I have to put Dolph Ziggler in there.
Yeah, Dolph's one of those guys. When he cashed in the Money in the Bank, I really thought, here we go, and then he got hurt and he lost the belt. And I don't know what it is with them. Sometimes I guess they believe people should never be hurt, and it took him a while to kind of climb back into that. Definitely underrated as far as his career goes. But I am also to the point with him now. I feel like I don't need to see him. Like I liked him and Robert Roode together. I liked the Dirty Dogs.
Yep.
I thought that they could have really done something heavily with them in that tag team division. But I don't know if I really want to see him with Seth and Austin Theory and Mustafa Ali and that mess right now. But definitely through the years, I can see what you're saying. Definitely was underrated. Jr.
You talking about his number one pick of Dolph Ziggler?
Yeah, you can, and then go right to yours. If that's what you want to do.
All right. I've always admired Dolph Ziggler, and something again I used earlier, gimmick momentum. You can almost go when you see Dolph come out now, you know he's probably not going to win. I like that mystery of seeing people with that type of talent, that type of caliber of athlete. When they are put in the mix, you don't know what's going to happen. And I believe that he's fallen into that category. You know that he's going to be there. He's just there to build others up. And I think he's very underrated, underutilized. For my number one pick, this is a conspiracy theory I had back in the day. And I think there was a lot of things missed with this. And this is Mr. Perfect, Kurt Hennig. He was the most underutilized person with the perfect gimmick. He could have been the perfect champion. He could have been the perfect king. Those are two money-making characters that he could have developed into. And the feuds he had with Bret Hart and that Intercontinental matches they had, second to none. But they never put him in that spotlight to excel even further than he went. So Mr. Perfect, Kurt Hennig, second generation wrestler, my number one pick.
That's a great pick.
He carried Bret Hart.
Oh, here we go with this. Here we go with this. So he was fantastic, and I would have liked to seen him and Hulk really main event some bigger pay-per-views. They kind of had these little Saturday night main event type feuds, but it was never brought towards any of the big pay-per-views. Really good promo guy. And even when he took time off and he came back, he was just as over, especially when he feuded with Flair. And he even wrestled Michaels there, King of the Ring. Great overall pick there. One of the better athletes in pro wrestling history, Mr. Perfect, Tom.
I totally agree. And I wasn't watching when he was big, but you go back and it's classic stuff. And I almost feel like I watched it when it actually happened because you go back and watch it so many times. Just a very entertaining guy. Great work ethic, great in ring. Definitely underutilized, and it kind of jogs my memory a little bit. I feel like Curtis Axel was should have been an honorable mention. I feel like he hasn't, never got a push or really done anything with. Now that we are in that realm, but yeah, great number one pick with Kurt Hennig.
Aaron, Mr. Perfect.
Yeah, I can't disagree with that one. Again, had the mid card titles several times. It seemed like had some great vignettes, videos over the years. Was that he could do it all. He could work. He could use the mic. He was good in anything they put him in anybody they put him with. And again, you can't discount that match he had with Bret years ago for that IC title. I mean, that was money. It's still talked about today as one of the greatest WrestleMania matches. So again, I can't disagree.
All right. So my number one. It's kind of rare sometimes that someone wins the world title and they're still underrated. This is the former NWA world champion. And to me, at the time, he was considered one of the better big men at the time. Because at that time, he was 6'5", 6'6". And unfortunately, every time he got to the WWE, they did absolutely nothing with him. And it's a shame. His matches with Ric Flair are classic. They are memorable. He's one of the Four Horsemen. And hopefully right now he's kicking out. It's Barry Windham. And man, what an athlete for 6'5" or 6'6", whatever he is, and just an amazing technician as well. He was believable. He could get that white heat as far as getting bloodied and the fans just coming to their feet wanting Barry Windham to just rise above and just whoop the Four Horsemen when he wasn't part of the Four Horsemen, or whether it was the Dangerous Alliance. Had great feuds every time he was involved in some major ones. Even when him and Dustin Rhodes kind of split up there for a while, that was a great feud there. But then he gets to WWE, and I get it. Early on, him and Mike Rotunda were tag champions around the WrestleMania 1 era, but the Stalker, Barry Windham, really? Blackjack Windham? This is what we got with him in the WWE, and it's so sad to see. And again, right now, fighting, was able to meet him down at, Wrestle. What
Starcast.
Yeah. Can't remember where we were, but it was great to finally meet him. So Barry Windham is my number one. JR.
I love Barry Windham. He's one of my all-time favorites of all time. I've watched him every single, pretty much every match he's ever wrestled that I had an opportunity to watch. I got to see it on TV, pay-per-view, whatever. But I really, I love that pick. A lot of thoughts and prayers going out to his family right now.
Yep. Tom?
It's a great pick. It just makes you wonder, as much money as the WWE's made over the years, how much money could they have made if they'd made some great decisions, like strapping a rocket to Barry Windham? I mean, that's just a license to print money at that point, and they just didn't see it. It's just amazing. Sure.
Aaron?
Yeah, so I think it goes back to something you said earlier there, Aaron, about another person that we mentioned, but I think it was timing with Barry Windham. He got to the big dance with WWF at a time where they were getting ready to transition out and go to, comedy gimmicks, in my opinion. That's what it was in the early to mid 90s. So Barry Windham coming out of what he had momentum wise and all the other territories, when he got to WWF, it was timing, in my opinion, that really set him back. He could have done great things, but I think it was just wrong time.
Yeah, and definitely thoughts and prayers out to him. And if there was one theme tonight, it was basically the WWE underutilizing people. I mean, you really look at it; it really was. It's kind of sad to say that. And we did this, if we do this show in 10 years, it may be all AEW underutilizing people. But good list. I mean, we didn't have a lot alike, and I was actually shocked we did have some alike. That was very well done. These guys don't know it yet down at the bottom, but they will be part of our year-end awards show, and they will be part of the Male Wrestler of the Year show, where we will break down our top 5 male wrestlers of the year. We'll do that in January. And then after that show, got to have a little bit more fun with some of these tops. We're going to do the top 5 or top 3 most overrated wrestlers. Top 3 overrated wrestlers. That should be. I know who Tom's number 1 is, unfortunately. That should be fun too. And like I said, we are going to take the rest of this year off. It's Christmas time. It's the holidays. Tom and I want to be able to spend some time with our families. And, we know everyone else will too. That's why in January, we're going to come back with our year-end awards. And instead of doing one show where we combine everything all together, we decided to give each category their own show. But that'll take us all through January. We've got a lot of special guests that will be joining us for special categories, such as Women's Wrestler of the Year, of course, these guys from Male Wrestler of the Year and Tag Team of the Year as well. So it should be a lot of fun for myself and Tom. Make sure you all hit the subscribe button. We appreciate y'all so much. And we always appreciate JR and Aaron for hopping on as well. Thank you guys
Absolutely.
so much.
Thank
It's always
you guys.
a lot of fun with these guys. everyone enjoy the holidays and stay safe. And from all of us, Merry